Hello, I am your host, Tracy Otsuka. Thank you so much for joining me here. I hope that you'll subscribe to this podcast, ADHD for Smartass Women, and our newsletter over at tracyotsuka.com. My purpose is always to show you who you are and then inspire you to be it. And in the thousands of ADHD women that I've had the privilege of meeting, I've never met a one that wasn't truly brilliant at something, not one. So, of course, I am just delighted to introduce you to Jessica Liddell. Liddell. Oh gosh. Sorry, Jessica. Jessica Liddell. I ask my guests how to pronounce their name, and then inevitably I get it all wrong. So, Jessica Gorlin Liddell is a professional mosaic mural artist and the owner and founder of Bella Mosaic Art, where she's been making mosaics professionally since 1997. Her work can be found in private collections and public spaces throughout the country. She has extensive experience with large scale installations, so she's been featured in numerous periodicals. Her work has also appeared on HGTV, the Travel Channel, Good Day Philadelphia, and the 215. Jessica has facilitated collaborative projects and creative team building for numerous schools, hospitals, municipalities, and nonprofit organizations. She lives with her husband, daughter, and dog in the Roxborough neighborhood of Philadelphia. Jessica, welcome. And did I get all of that right?
Thank you so much. Yes, that was wonderful.
Great. It's such a pleasure to have you here. As I was telling you, and I'll tell our audience as well, because I feel like nothing is quite as perfect as it normally is, but I am actually in New York City. I am in my son's apartment. As you can tell, the backdrop, Frank Sinatra, who kind of looks like the devil, and not with my my good microphone. I have my little travel one that I use, which frankly I recorded this podcast, I don't know, for about a year and a half, I think, before I had my good microphone with this microphone. So, we've been trying to adjust mics and get sound, to work. And so we hope that we did it. But anyway, Jessica, you know that I want to talk about what it is you do and how you've been so successful at what you do. But as usual, I always want to start with the ADHD diagnoses. So, can you tell me a little bit about that? So, was it a later in life diagnosis, or were you diagnosed as a child?
Sure. So I was diagnosed at 30. I had just had my first and only child.
Ah,
Um, and I was feeling a little overwhelmed. I was having a hard time kind of managing my schedule and her schedule. Having a newborn, because I'm a business owner, I didn't have a very specific maternity leave. Like I didn't have I was kind of trying to work and trying to, figure out what it meant to, be a mom of a newborn. And it was all very overwhelming. And one day my husband came home and walked into the kitchen and said, "Jess, do you know that the burner is on? Like,
oh
how
no.
long has the burner been on?" And I couldn't figure out, like, had I made tea recently? Has it been on since that morning when I made coffee for myself? Um, and he said, you really have to talk to someone. I think there's a problem. And that was kind of the catalyst. So I went
So,
online.
so can I ask you,
Yeah,
Jessica? Did you trust that what he said was in fact true because you had kind of been noticing all of these sorts of things, or did you just right away get defensive?
because like the house could have burned down with my new baby in it, I was probably more receptive to that. And was like, "Oh my gosh, you're right. Like, what the heck?" So, so yeah, there were some like echoes of, oh, my friends teasing me that I was so ADD, and I thought maybe there's something to this. Maybe I need to look in. Maybe this is what's happening. And so I went online and took one of those surveys.
So I need to stop you again. So, what you're telling me is that you, in the back of your mind, already had this sense that maybe I have ADHD
Yeah.
before any of this. Okay, interesting.
Um, And, you could at that time, like, pull up like a questionnaire, kind of like if you answered yes to this many questions kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Like
That's what
screener.
I did. And it was like, every single question was like a resounding yes. And I thought, oh, okay. And I kept kind of learning and got some library books um, out, and I can't remember which ones, but I remember staying up all night, reading them, thinking, oh, this is it. This is what's happening. And then, I went to my doctor, paper in hand, that I printed out of my computer. That was kind of how that ball got rolling, I guess.
And
I
about
think
how long ago was that?
so I just turned 50. So
20
that
years.
was when I was 30. I just turned 30 when I
Okay.
had my daughter.
Okay. So, can you tell us what was Jessica like as a child?
Well, as a child, I was, very happy, creative, had lots of friends, always, talking in class, very social. Um, when I hit middle school, I started running into some problems, and I started, really having trouble with school. And, I was kind of moved from the gifted classes to the remedial classes. And, I really, that was kind of the beginning of my challenges with school, with academics.
So, when you say during middle school, was this right around puberty when you started to notice that you had just changed?
Yeah, but also I think the material was getting so much harder,
Hmm.
and I wasn't able to keep up. Um, and uh, yeah, I think that was also happening.
What about the social stuff? Was that still kind of your strong suit?
Yeah, I was always a really social kid. I had lots of friends, and I was always being told that I was too noisy and loud in class and that kind of thing. So I was
Okay.
always like, chatting it up with somebody.
So I can't remember. Maybe we didn't even talk about it. So you started to struggle in school, and did the struggles get worse throughout high school?
Yes, yeah, so bad that my parents and I were arguing a lot,
Mm.
and I was being threatened with boarding school.
Oh,
And then my mother was threatening to send me to Catholic school, which was very strange because we were Jewish, and wasn't sure how that was going to solve anything because
I went to Catholic school, and from my understanding, there's always one or two girl. Well, and mine was all girl. There was always one or two girls in every grade that was Jewish. Yeah, and there's probably no Jewish school in the area.
I was like, why would I go to Catholic school? And so I actually moved away from my parents um, to try and get a fresh start at 16. I
Okay,
moved
hold on
away.
a second. Hold on a second. So, what does that look like? Does that look like you getting so frustrated with your parents? They're so frustrated with you because they're thinking you're just not trying hard enough that
Yes,
you just up and said, "You know what? I'm going to basically emancipate myself and move out."
all of the above. Yes,
Oh, okay.
but actually, I had um, I had an older brother. Now I have older siblings that are. Um, this is a whole long story, but they are much older than me.
Mhm.
So my eldest brother had just had kids. He
Okay.
had two kids, and he lived in Northern California, very close to you.
Mm.
Um,
What city?
he lived in a little town on the way to on the way to Point Reyes,
Mm.
called Forest Knolls.
Yeah.
If you know it,
Yeah.
near Lagunitas and
Yeah.
Samuel P. Taylor Park.
Yeah.
So he was overwhelmed himself with his kids, and I had done a lot of babysitting and a lot of childcare. So we kind of worked out that I was going to move in with him, help him with his kids, and then go to the local high school there.
And
So
did that work out better for you?
it was a great move for me. It really was. Like it um, totally changed my life in so many ways.
So,
So
how?
um, the high school had an incredible ceramics program, and that is where I discovered ceramics. Um, and so that was the biggest thing. And being from California, there's just a different level of acceptance in Northern California, maybe than in Southern California. I felt a little less like an outsider, I guess. And I felt a little more nurtured in Northern California, not to offend a bunch of Southern Californians, but it was just a different feeling in
Well, I
school.
think there's probably a greater understanding of creativity and a willingness to embrace it. Certainly in Northern California, and I would think certainly with ceramics, that would probably be one of the best places to be.
Yes, it was amazing. I mean, my district had just this incredible ceramics program, and there have been quite a few professional artists that have come out of the district.
So
So
I'm curious. Doing really well in that one thing, and it sounds like you enjoyed it, more than enjoyed it. You really loved it, and you were also very good at it. Did that change anything with respect to school in general? So you
absolutely.
just got better in all subjects because you had this one anchor.
Honestly, I think it saved me. It kept me coming to school.
Mhm.
Like I wanted to go to school because I could go and, do this thing that I was so excited about, that I was so into. And I had a wonderful teacher, Warren Fairbanks, who he would allow me to, be in his classroom all the time, on my lunch break, during, my free periods. And I would just stay in there. And at the time, I was really into throwing on the wheel. And
Mhm.
so,
Does that is that like pottery? Is that what that means? Throwing
yes,
on the wheel?
exactly.
Okay.
You're throwing pottery on a
Yeah.
spinning wheel. So, yeah, so I was so fortunate that he was supportive, and because I was, I had to be at school to go to ceramics class, kept me going to all the subjects that I didn't particularly care for, like economics and, history and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So,
But you
and I
got
did
better in
better. I
those.
did better.
And so what did your parents think?
So my parents were happy. My parents were happy. But the interesting thing about that is I left my parents at 16 and I never went back.
Mm.
That was like kind of when I was on my own from 16 on, because I left my brother's place at 18, got my own apartment, and I was already established, and my parents had sold their house and retired, so it was, I ended up having to, kind of do things for myself a little early.
So what did you do after high school?
So after high school, I went to community college,
Hmm.
College at Marin.
Oh yeah, one of the things that I wanted to bring up though is, or I wanted to ask you, I am assuming that the high school you were in was also much smaller than
Yes,
the high
yes,
schools you were
yes.
used to. Yeah.
It was a huge difference. There was like, I think our graduating class was 100,
Yeah.
and it had been hundreds of kids in Southern California all at this high school that I had attended.
Okay. And I didn't understand that. I guess I got all confused because I know that you're from Philadelphia, but you were raised in Southern California. Is that what you're saying? And then moved to your brothers up in Northern California.
Yes, I was
Okay.
raised in Lake Forest, California, which is like kind of near Laguna Beach. If you, a lot of people go to Laguna
Oh,
Beach on
yeah.
vacation, so it's
Yeah.
like inland, um, where the
Okay.
five meets the 405, as they say.
Got it. Got it.
I
Okay.
sound like a real Californian when I say that.
So you went to community college, College of Marin. They call it COM, right? Did they call it COM
Yeah,
then?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
And then what? What were you studying at the College of Marin?
So I was just at the time trying to, again, like doing ceramics, of course, because I wanted to do ceramics.
And were you thinking that's what I want to do professionally, or at that point where you're like, you can't do that as a
Yeah,
professionally?
I had the chorus of people telling me, you can't be
Mm.
an artist. That's not going to work out.
Ah,
So I was trying to, come up with a practical um, thing that I could study. And I was going to, I worked with kids a lot. I'd done a lot of teaching, and
hmm.
um, as a young person, like a camp counselor, teaching
Right.
different activities. And I enjoyed that. And so I decided I was going to be a teacher.
Okay.
So I was getting my general education at community college.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, I thought at some point I would transfer. Uh, so, yeah.
And so what happened?
So my brother found this school. It was this tiny liberal arts school in San Francisco called New College of California. That
Is
no
this,
longer
I was going to say,
exists.
is this still there? Because I haven't heard of it.
No, it was a strange place, but they didn't give grades. They had kind of this like self-guided, like you came up with your own.
Was it
Um,
like pass, no pass?
yeah. And so he said, I think this would work out really well for you. And it did. It was very experiential. Um, and that worked out well. So I took some courses there. That's where I graduated from with my BA. And then I always would like jump in and out. I was on like a 5, maybe even 6 year plan. I would jump in and out, like take some ceramics classes at another, community college, city college in San Francisco. I took ceramics at Laney College at some point in Oakland. Like I was on the ceramics community college tour.
And so, what was your major? Like, what did you graduate in? What were you studying?
So I was studying education, but
Okay.
at some point after spending, they put you at New College, they had some partnerships with local schools and they put us in the schools. Um, it wasn't a student teaching. It wasn't anything that formal, but they just wanted us to, get a sense of what it looks like in the classroom. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to do this. This doesn't seem like me. Like I don't think I want to be a teacher. And I took a little time off. Um, this was when I was 20. I took a semester off and I went backpacking in Europe. And I ended up in Barcelona, which is a city that's famous for their mosaics.
Yeah.
And Tony Gaudi was an architect there that covered the facades of his buildings with mosaic. And so I was like backpacking along, and I walked up and saw this incredible building and was just blown away. I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And so that changed my major from that point. I decided to major in arts education. I was still trying to be somewhat practical, arts administration and studio art. So because I could kind of design this major according to my interests, that's what I did.
And it wasn't too late.
No, it was.
You still had enough time, enough classes to take that you could kind of guide yourself in that direction. It's so interesting. If I told you how many people I speak with, and I'm actually thinking of my son right now as well, how their life changes when they take some time and they go travel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So it's not an unusual story.
yeah, it was huge. I mean, because I kind of realized, well, all the things that I love, like I can teach and I can, do ceramics and I can create public art, using this medium. And at the time, I had been teaching at a Boys and Girls Club. I'd taken time off, obviously, to go away, but I came back, and this Boys and Girls Club in San Francisco, which was a fantastic place. Um, I was directing this little ceramics program with the kids, and I just started making mosaics. So the kids and I were like, making these mosaics to hang on the walls, and
Was this before Barcelona or after?
this was after.
After. And had you gone to Barcelona specifically? Were you like, I want to go to that city because of their mosaics, or did you even know about that?
No, the amazing thing is I had no idea.
Ah,
I was just like, I stopped in my tracks when I saw this building. And I was like, what is this? This is incredible. And so when I was there in Barcelona, I saw the building. Um, there's many sites,
Yeah.
and then I went kind of to every single one,
Huh?
make sure that I got to see them all. And then when I came home to the States, I was, just on a mission. I was like, okay, I need to learn this now. I need to learn how to make, mosaics. I need to learn how to lay tile. How am I going to figure this out?
So today, are you one of the top people in the United States that does that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a small, I don't know if I would say that, but there's a small group of us.
Yeah. And you
Um,
all know each other?
we do. We have a conference that I've been so fortunate to attend and teach. There's a number of us that teach the conference.
Okay,
Um,
before we go right to there, because that's the next thing we're going to go to, I just want to wrap this whole section up and go back to your diagnoses. And I wanted to know what changed once you were diagnosed.
well, I definitely felt a lot of relief. And I felt like, okay, this isn't just me. This isn't like a flaw with my character. Like I'm okay. It's just that I have these challenges that I have to work through. So that felt really good.
Did
Um,
your doctor recommend medication?
yes, and I did. I was on medication at first initially, absolutely.
And how did that work?
That was great. Like I felt like it was really helping me,
Uh-huh.
and then it was helping me. Being on the medication was helping me to like behaviorally figure out what could help me. Um, like I could be clear headed enough that I could, just focus on the behavioral stuff as well.
Right,
Um,
right.
oh, sorry.
Oops. So it was like the medication allowed you to put other systems in place to teach yourself and to teach your brain what you needed to be successful, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, absolutely.
And can I ask you what medication you're no longer on medication, it sounds like.
Um, I will sometimes, if I feel like I'm struggling a little bit, I will
Mm.
sometimes take it. But
And
I've been trying to go without it, because there are just some, undesirable side effects that I've
side
experienced.
effects. Yeah. Yeah. And I've heard that more and more that the women that I talk to, the women I work with, they'll talk to their doctors and they create this. It's not a schedule because it's more just if there's something that I'm working on that I know that I typically really struggle with, I struggle to start it. And if I don't start it, it ends up being this big ball of mess at the end here. I will take medication in order to get that done because I know that's so difficult.
Yeah,
And I just, I wish medication worked for me so I could do that, but unfortunately it doesn't. So everyone will always ask me, so Tracy, you need to ask what the medication is, as if because it works for you, it's going to work for them. That is not true. It's all, every individual is different and we're all kind of guinea pigs in terms of we got to try it to see if it works. So will you tell us what you were taking and what you still take?
so I was taking Adderall,
Mhm.
and I will still from time to time take Adderall.
Okay.
Um, I've tried other things. I tried Focalin. At some point, I was put on Ritalin.
Yeah.
But I mean, Adderall is what helps me the most. But again, like I also have to struggle with these side effects that I don't know that I should talk about that
So
publicly.
do you
But
mind talking about it, what the side effects are?
well, I definitely have had trouble sleeping
Oh,
with Adderall.
yeah.
Um, but the thing that was worse for me is I was having some dental issues, and my dentist thought it was because of it.
Oh, so grinding?
No, like I was having a lot of dental work that I had to get done, and he said there was something about the saliva, like not
Oh.
producing saliva, that
Mhm.
was causing me to get cavities.
Ah,
Um, and I mean, I was having to get like root canals.
yeah, that's so,
Oh,
I mean, we
I
did a
don't know
whole
if that's
podcast
something I
on
should
that.
say, but like, woof. I was like, okay, why I have to get root canals? Like, what is going on? Like,
Yeah.
I've never had that problem.
So you were cracking teeth?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard this for, with the stimulant medication, and I am already such a teeth grinder um, that thank God that stuff didn't work for me. The stimulant medication didn't work for me because I don't think I'd have any teeth. Um, so, okay, let's talk about now what you do. Can you describe for us what mosaic mural art is and what it looks like?
Yeah, so mosaics are it's a really ancient art form. So mosaic has been practiced for like thousands of years, and it can be created with all different types of materials. So way back, people were making mosaics with little pebbles and bits of stone, and then glass, found objects. When I started, it was really big to use broken dishes, like that whole shabby chic.
Yeah.
That was that shabby chic time when everyone was doing like broken dish mosaics. Um, you can use ceramics, and so what I do, so a mosaic is basically just a picture that's made up of a lot of little pieces. Um, and the neat thing about it is that you can use so many different types of materials, and you can cover so many different surfaces. And so when I started, I was doing, like gifts, small pieces, or wall art. And then my projects got bigger and bigger. And then I started, doing big wall murals using mosaic. Um, and so that was really exciting. Um, and again, there's so many things you can do. I think it's been a great art form for me because I never get bored. There's always something new to learn. There's always a new technique to try. I get excited when somebody, rolls out a new type of material. Um, it's always keeps it interesting to be, working in this field. Um,
Do you add to that as well in terms of have you discovered, new techniques or new ways of doing mosaic that, when someone sees your art or sees art, they know, oh, that's Jessica's art.
yeah, I think a lot of us have like a particular style that we have, and I definitely think that people see my work and know it's mine. Um, I love silkscreen. I started it in college, and so I've played around a lot with silkscreen on clay. Um, and so that's something that I'm doing more and more in my work, and something I'd like to have more time to play around with and develop. So hopefully I'll be doing more of that, as time passes. But yeah, definitely have a style. And then, I teach a lot. I'm what you call a teaching artist. So I did end up becoming a teacher after all, really. Um, and so I teach a lot of people how, to do what I do. And then, that's exciting because they're showing me the things that they've learned, and I'm showing them the things that I've learned, and I'm kind of sending a lot of people out into the world doing this work. So I'm teaching adults, and
And
I
that is so fascinating to me. So, you thought early on, I want to be a teacher. But the deal was you needed to figure out what it is that you wanted to teach and how you wanted to teach. You didn't want to do teaching the way most people do teaching. You had your own way.
absolutely, yeah.
So you weren't wrong.
Well, and it's great. I mean, I've used all the skills that like my 20-year-old self thought I needed back in this weird little
Yes.
college. I was learning about grant writing, and I was hanging art shows and networking with other artists and curators, and I've I've used all that stuff um,
Hmm.
throughout my career. So, and because the ADD, I want to do all these different things.
Right. So you've been running your business for almost 25 years,
Yes.
which is unusual for us, right? We jump around a little bit more than that. How did it actually start? And
How
how
the
have you
business start?
kept yourself interested so that you're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater? You are continuing to grow in what it is that you love and you're not getting bored.
Yeah. So I started a business in San Francisco. Well, actually, I was living in Oakland, and um, I did finally get some formal training in mosaics. I took some courses at CCAC. It was called at the time the California College of Art and Craft. I believe it has changed its name to the California College of Art and Design at this time. Um, and yeah, I just started creating work to hang in some galleries. At the time, I think I was doing some craft shows, and then I landed my first, what they call an artist residency, where I went into a school. I worked with the kids to make mosaics, and then those mosaics hung on the wall. So that was the first of, I mean, I've done hundreds of schools at this point. Um, I worked with a designer in that area and started like putting some mosaics in people's homes, like kitchen backsplashes. And
Yeah.
I did a skylight. Um, I did like a backyard mosaic in San Francisco. So I was, kind of just learning the techniques and starting to get my name out there. Um, and then we decided, my husband and I, that maybe being an artist, a professional artist in San Francisco was going to be a hard road because it's pretty expensive to live there.
Ah, okay.
He's from Philadelphia. And so we decided to start, looking here to see if this might be a place to move. And we
Did you
decided.
have your daughter at that time?
No, I
Your
was
daughter?
in my mid-20s, I guess.
Mm.
So we got married and then moved to Philadelphia. And it was great. I was able to kind of establish myself here. We were able to buy a home. We bought the building that houses my studio, and we renovated that. And that's just something that would have been a little harder to do in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
At the time that we were there, that would have been like the late 90s.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I really enjoyed living in Philadelphia and, starting to get these, or I was starting to get these really exciting opportunities here on the East Coast. And so, it was a good move. I miss California, especially the Bay Area, but I try and get back fairly often.
So basically, what you're saying is that who said you can't make a very good living as an artist?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a grind. Like it's hard work for
Yeah.
sure. Like I work really hard.
Uh-huh.
But I truly think that it's, you could do it. Like you set your sight to what you want to do, make it happen.
But
There's
you
a lot of
mentioned,
avenues within the arts, and I mean, I really enjoy teaching. I don't like spending all my time alone in my studio. I mean, I will, and I'll listen to your podcast when I'm in there. But I do like interacting with people, and so that's where, like for me, um, teaching, helps me to kind of diversify what I do, I guess. But then also, it helps to just what's the word that I'm looking for? It just helps socially to have that feedback and
well,
get
and you had
people
also
excited.
mentioned that you've been social from as long as you can remember. So
That
that
is true.
makes sense. You said something to me when you wrote me, something about the fact that you work a lot on your own. So that's why you have time to listen to podcasts, and I'm sure not just ours, but other podcasts. Um, and then you mentioned something about whether you're in your studio or you're perched on the side of a building. I'm like, what?
Well, because as a muralist, you got to climb up the scaffolding.
Oh. So I guess you don't have any fear of heights.
Oh, I do actually, and I have fear of faulty scaffolding. I've had one scaffolding that was sort of starting to roll down the side.
Oh my
It was
gosh.
terrifying. The man came running up and held it in place and got the locking mechanism fixed on
Oh
it.
my gosh.
But no, it's actually not that common for me to be on scaffolding, but like it's part, when you're a muralist, that's one of the things
Yeah.
you do. And as I'm getting older, I'm trying to, encourage people to stay low with, where they want to put their mosaics and indoors
Yeah.
because like this summer heat in Philadelphia to be outside working is
Wow. Wow.
so.
Yeah,
But
that
yeah,
that would just count me out, right? I could
like,
not even like I can barely just go to the, like, oh, I don't know, when I'm in New York and I'm on a high floor and I just kind of look down and literally my toes curl. I can't. I
yeah,
can't even go. Yeah, and
it
I'm
takes
totally safe.
it takes some getting used to, that's for sure. But like it's fun. No, the funny thing about being on the side of a building for a long period of time is that you meet a lot of people. Like everyone wants to come and talk to you and tell you all about like themselves or about the corner that you're on, or they
That's
want to give you
interesting.
feedback on what you're
Yeah.
making.
It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, but see, this is where hyperfocus is my best friend because whether I'm in my studio or I'm working on site. So what I'm doing, like when I say I'm working for long periods of time, I'm cutting up little pieces of tile, or I'm taking tiles that I make out of clay and I'm attaching them with cement to the wall. So
So
that's what
they're
I'm doing.
already made, right? This is all, I don't even know how you do that as far as just knowing what goes where.
Yeah, it's kind of all mapped out. And sometimes I'm improvising. Sometimes I have assistants or a team with me. Sometimes we're taking panels that I've already constructed in my studio and attaching them to a wall and then just filling in the seams. So I do it all different ways. Um, and yeah.
So, Jessica, you're a public artist who's had success with large scale commission work and artist residencies. Both of these must require a lot of logistical planning. So, how do you do that? How do you make this work?
Um, that's a good question. I feel like at this point I have it down to kind of a science. Like I know that okay, I have to go to the meeting, do the site visit, take the measurements. I have I keep very careful notes. I take a lot of pictures on my phone. Like I take pictures of everything and then I label them, like, or I put them in folders according to jobs. Um, I kind of make lists of, the names of the principal, people that I'm going to be working with. Um, Scheduling is probably the hardest part for me.
Mhm.
But, I really try to be careful about leaving time between um, parts of the project or between projects so that I don't get too like overwhelmed. Um, and does that answer your question? I feel like I'm being
So,
a little vague.
so it sounds like, well, I mean, every business is different and there's different parts to every
Mm-hmm.
business. And I'm assuming this has certain things that you do every time. And so my question is, or my comment is, it sounds like you've created a system
Yeah.
that you follow every single time.
Yeah. And like my systems have systems and I try and do things like the same way. And, I've learned along the way, like what really works. And then I just keep doing the same thing.
Do you have any help on the administrative stuff, which is often what we struggle so much with?
Not really, no.
You do it all, so there's
But
no
see,
assistant.
I'm also working, like, okay, so in the case of, like I've done some murals in New York City where you are actually. So I was working on some murals that I did at New York Presbyterian Hospital.
Hmm.
Um, and so I've done 5 murals for them over the years. In their children's hospital and children's unit, and then one's in their emergency room. Um, and hopefully you won't end up there when you're in New York.
No, but I was thinking of, oh, I should go visit and go look for them.
And, But like in that case, I have a project manager that's an art consultant, and she's like lining it all up meetings, and she's kind of keeping me on track with, um, like deadlines and things. Um, so in some cases, I'm partnering with people who are taking some of those um, jobs away from me, or I can
Yeah.
delegate those things to. Or I just finished a project with the Pennsylvania Turnpike, and for that project, we had a big crew of people. We had people from the Arts Council and people from an arts organization here in Philadelphia and people from the Turnpike, and everyone was working together to make sure all of our logistical needs were taken care of. So it's not just I'm doing my piece of it, but then there's a lot of other people um, coordinating. Or the art teachers that I work with at schools, they'll be coordinating installation or volunteers, or they'll be setting up a schedule that works for them and their students that I can just kind of jump into. So all that stuff doesn't fall on me. I'm kind of fortunate in that
Mm.
regard. I do have to like make sure, I have all the tiles we need and all the grout. And I always try and look ahead to my next few projects. So I'm always ordering like ahead of time, make sure I have all the products that I need, um, and the tools and all that stuff.
So again, you're working within a system that you've created that you know is going to work. And do you do anything last minute, or is all of this is the structure and the planning? Like, do you ever run out of materials and it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't order this, or does that not happen?
Oh, yes, that does. Oh, absolutely, certainly. I mean, I can't.
Okay.
I'm always planning, but I'm certainly running out of materials, or I forget something at the studio. But as all of us are, I am a good problem solver. I can always come up with something at the last minute to figure something out.
Wonderful.
And
Um,
being my own boss too, I have to say, like, it is nice because I can call up a school and say, listen, the tile didn't come in. Like, you know, we're going to have to either work on a different part of the project, or, can we reschedule for
yeah.
next week or something like that. Does happen. It's not like that never happens.
Right.
Um,
Right,
so,
but you're absolutely right because you're running the show. There's no one to answer to. You can certainly call the client and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, but the tile didn't come in," regardless if it didn't come in because you didn't order it early enough, or there's really a problem, right? You ordered it and it was the supplier's issue.
yeah. And also, like, I'm very lucky that, you know, I work with a lot of the same people over and over again. Like,
Yeah.
I did one project for a little zoo outside of Philadelphia called the Elmwood Park Zoo, and then they called me 4 different times to do
Mm,
murals. So like they know me, I know them, they know,
yeah.
so uh,
Relationships.
they get to know a realer me every time we do a project together,
Right.
possibly.
Right. How long do these projects typically take? Like, how many of them do you do in a year?
Um, I generally do between 6 and 8 projects a year.
Okay, and that makes it much more manageable too.
Yeah. I mean, I'm also doing other things. Like I'm teaching classes in my studio, and I might do like a little project where I just go somewhere for a couple days and, teach a workshop or something. Um, but, but yeah, I'm doing like 6 to 8 larger scale projects a year. And
Yeah.
those are either in schools or commissions, or like a combination of the two. Like
Hmm.
yesterday, we finished all the tile work for a synagogue community project. So it was all the members of the synagogue working together to create a mosaic wall on the outside of their building.
Yeah.
Um,
Also, on your website, I noticed that you mentioned mosaic team building. What is that?
yeah, so that's something that's been really fun. That started a number of years ago. Somebody called me and just asked, well, I see you do a lot of school projects. Can you do corporate team building? And I said, well, I don't see why not. Like, I think that that would work. So, so we started creating like a program where I went into some different companies. I think the first one was Marriott, and gathered all these executives together. They're wearing their, suits, and they're like nice dresses.
Oh my gosh,
And
the
then I'm
mosaic
like
work.
giving them safety goggles and tools. And they all made mosaics together in small groups.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had to like discuss, okay, what do we want this to look like? Um, how are we gonna? What are the colors gonna be? And so they really had to come together and make this artwork. And it was a really fun. It's a really fun process. And then they hang it on the wall of their office or their facility. So like that particular example, I'm saying Marriott, like that was the sales office. So that was the group of executives. They put, they put them on the walls. But then I replicated that project many times. The two biggest ones we did were in hospitals. So we would set up in the cafeteria, in these hospitals. And that was so interesting because we would see all these people coming through working on these mosaic panels. And it was like the surgeon standing next to, the cafeteria worker that gives him his lunch.
Mm-hmm.
And, this idea of coming together and creating art together kind of evens the playing field. And it was so interesting in this setting, where no one is used to being at work making art together. And it just, so that's been a really fun kind of offshoot of the mosaics that I do doing these team building events. And so we've done, a lot of them. And then in some cases, they'll be hung, like the work will be hung in very prominent places in either the hospital or the building, in the lobby or the cafeteria. And that's fun for people to like walk past the work that they did with their coworkers.
I'm curious, have you seen a difference when you see all these different people with all these different careers? They all come together, they create these mosaics. Um, have you noticed a pattern of who's more creative versus less creative? Like, can
That's
you
a
see
funny
it in what they do
question.
for a living?
That's an interesting question. I don't know. Um, Actually, yeah, there was like a group of like they were like the art department of an organization, and they were like top of the class. I
Yeah.
was like, oh my gosh, like they're gonna make better mosaic than I would. Like, what are they doing? They had like a whole plan. Yeah, so
Yeah.
but but now I think the fun part is like that they all don't know what to do, and they kind of have to figure it out together.
Yeah.
And they're challenged, but that then they overcome their challenge. It's like now that I know a little more about team building, it's kind of the perfect scenario where they have to come together to work things out.
Yeah. I noticed that you also offer classes, and I'm telling you, if I were in Philadelphia, I would have signed up already. I love what you do. And I don't know if this is just mosaics in general. It probably is, but there seems like there's so much opportunity. They seem so charming and full of whimsy. And I don't know, there's just something really beautiful about them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a few things that are special about mosaic. I think when you're learning as a beginner, and one of the things that I always tell people, it's very forgiving. So like it's not like the type of artwork where you have to study for years and like to maybe make something that looks half decent, or it's like super process oriented. So by the time you get to the third step, you've lost interest or whatever. Mosaic, you can sit down in a night and like make something really nice. And so I think that that's why it's accessible for people. And that's why I love doing it with groups of people because everyone can pitch in and make something pretty good without a whole lot of training. But yeah, I teach. I have a. Oh, so sorry. I don't know why that keeps happening. I have a storefront studio where I teach workshops, and then I just teach individuals there, and
Yeah.
then that's separate from what I do in the schools or with different companies. Yeah.
And that's probably why you've been able to make this work for 25 plus years, right? Because you have constantly kind of your business has evolved into all these different areas, which makes it new and exciting.
Yes. And every time I try something new, I'm like, oh, that worked out pretty well. Okay, let's market that. Like, how can I get more of those?
Right.
So I think that's a good way to do it too. Is when you find like a model that works, that is, where you can make a nice profit, then you figure out, okay, that's what I need to, try and make happen again. Just replicate it.
Right. Right.
Um, and it keeps it interesting. Although, like sometimes, you know, people are thinking, how do you do all these different things? Like, this is insane. Like, you do, the art, you do the teaching. Like, every now and again, my student will, see something I'm working on in my studio. I'm like, are you making that too? Like, what?
Yeah.
So it is a little crazy too.
So, what are the ADHD traits that you feel are responsible for your success as a mosaic mural artist?
100% hyper focus.
Mm,
I think the fact that I can like sit in my studio and work on a mosaic for 8 hours at a time, and it's like no time has passed.
yeah.
Um, and I can just get in that zone. And it feels so good. Like it feels really good to do that work.
Yeah.
And that's when I'm usually listening to a podcast.
Yeah.
And then also, I just think I get a lot of ideas, and I don't know if that's a ADD thinking outside the box kind of,
Totally.
but I feel like it's just sometimes so many ideas.
Yeah.
I'm never like stuck like with, oh, I don't know what I'm gonna do here. Like if anything, I'm getting too many ideas. I have to weed out like the ones that maybe that wouldn't be. Um, and so that I feel so blessed by that. Just this constant source of um, like images popping into my head that I can use. Um, so yeah,
And what do you think the key to living successfully with ADHD is?
it's a hard question. I think that okay, I really have to think about this one for a sec. Um, I definitely think you have to be easy on yourself. Like, you can't, like, there was a time when I was just so hard on myself.
Mhm.
And, um, and I think you have to, give yourself some grace, I guess. Because with the frustrating challenges, there's also a lot of good that comes. Um, and so I try to just be grateful for that and grateful for like the success that I have, and don't not get too hung up on like something negative someone says, or like, oh darn it, I forgot, I was supposed to be like
So you
studio at this time.
so do you just kind of laugh it off? It's like, oh well, whatever.
Yes, I guess. I tend to have that kind of self-deprecating humor, I
Mhm.
suppose.
Mhm.
And so I'll laugh it off, or I'll make a joke. And if I'm talking to a friend or someone close to me, like they know, you know. Um, and yeah, I guess I'm just honest about, um, or I try to be honest about some of the things I struggle with, I suppose.
Yeah.
Um, but also, I think you have to kind of manage people's expectations a bit too. Um, like I tried not to say to someone, okay, this artwork will be ready, on this day. I'll say, listen, I'm going to try and have it done at this time. Might be a little later. I try and leave things a little open.
You give yourself some fudge room just in case.
Yeah, because you don't want to promise people something that's going to be a real struggle for you to deliver.
Mm-hmm.
And and I know people do that whether or not they have ADD. You never know, like if there's going to be supply chain issues or whatever the case may be. But then you just don't have the same sense of what's the word? You're just not as tense about whether or not something's going to work out in the exact way you think it's going to.
Yeah. So, Jessica, where can people find you if they want to know more about you and what you do?
So, I am on Instagram and Facebook. My account is Bella Mosaic. So BellaMosaic. And that's my website as well, bellamosaic.com.
Wonderful.
BellaMosaic.com. And and I do a lot of work around this region, like Philadelphia, New Jersey, doing a lot of work around Pennsylvania. I go up to New York, did a project in Florida last year. I definitely travel for these projects. And I travel for, the artist residencies. I travel for team building. I don't travel so much for, I wouldn't travel for like a residential project or anything, but I've been fortunate to be able to do some municipal and like corporate work, in other parts of the country.
So what's an artist residency?
So when I say artist residency, well, there's a few different things that are referred to as an artist residency. So there are a lot of organizations that will put artists in the schools. So the idea is that you would go into a school, work with the kids for a certain number of days, and then at the end there would be something to show for that time. So in my case, it's a mural, but like there might be a theater group that does a residency, and at the end of their time period, they would have a performance, a musician performance. I've also done residencies. I did one in a retirement home in central Pennsylvania. So I worked for 10 days last summer with a bunch of folks that were living at that retirement home. And then we created some murals. So it doesn't have to be a school, but it's generally like a place, where people are gathering, art center.
Wonderful.
But then there are other types of artist residencies where organizations will bring an artist in to live somewhere and work outside of where they live. So I'm doing one of those in the fall. I'll be living for a month in Sardinia, Italy.
Oh, how great.
Doing a residency there. So I won't be teaching, but I'll be creating work and utilizing this studio space that they give me and having some interactions with the village, the people that live in the village.
And so for an artist residency like that, is the idea that they provide the space. I don't know if they provide any kind of living, stipend, but when you leave, do you leave like your mosaics? Are you doing a mural for them, or how does that work?
Well, and for this particular program, they ask all the artists that are involved to donate something. So I just saw one of the artists that was recently there donated a workshop to all the villagers. So all the villagers came and learned how to do watercolor painting, which was really nice. For my, and could be other things too. For my residency, I am donating a small sign that will hang, that I will leave, that will be hung at the facility. So
Okay.
I'm doing a mosaic sign that I'll be putting in my backpack and hoping that it gets there intact.
Got it. So it's all different. I mean, you can have an artist residency where you come to a city that you don't live in, you stay there for a month, you do you paint a bunch of pictures and then you can actually sell them
Mm-hmm.
or you donate them.
Right.
Or it can be anything basically.
It can be anything, and sometimes the organization will pay you to
Uh-huh.
be there, providing service for their organization, and
Yeah.
sometimes you will pay them, just to help cover um, your the cost of living. But usually, it's a very discounted rate because it's
Yeah.
supplemented by grants and foundations and stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a pretty exciting and interesting world out there for artists. These residencies.
No, I
Um,
think that's
but
that's
it is a little
amazing.
confusing the way that it or the how it's called, how it's referred
Yeah. Well,
to.
I just always knew it was something that it's a good thing and it's an honor, but I didn't quite know how exactly it works.
Yeah,
Um,
I guess you could say it's kind of like a cultural exchange. So it's a
yeah,
way that
yeah, yeah.
artists are being brought into an area organization to just provide like an experience for the
Yeah.
people that utilize that.
Perfect. Okay, so Jessica, this is all going to be in the show notes, but if people want to find you, want to know more about what you do, they're going to go to bellamosaic.com or Bella Mosaic on both Instagram and Facebook, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Wonderful. Jessica, thank you so much for spending time with us here today. It was truly an honor to get to know you.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so exciting to talk to you today.
Wonderful. So that's what I have for you for this week. If you like this episode with Jessica, please let us know by leaving a review. Our goal is to change the conversation around ADHD, helping as many women as we possibly can learn how their ADHD brains work so that they too may discover their amazing strengths. As always, you're listening to ADHD for Smartass Women. Come join me over at tracyotsuka.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you here next week.